For those who may not have seen it, last week we covered the infamous Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric on Wii U from 2014. That video covered a lot of ground in regards to what made that game such a spectacular failure, so I say that you should definitely go watch that to get fully caught up. But to cover the major highlights, the game was unstable upon release, a product of it being made for the CryEngine that wasn't fully compatible with the Wii U console. The game was a boring and bland kids game that offered little appeal to Sonic fans and kids as well, with numerous better options out there, and showed a remarkable amount of negligence on Sega's part, letting another disaster game hit store shelves just 8 years after their last one. An attempt to turn a lot of profit that blew up in their face because Rise of Lyric sold terribly, tainting their entire Sonic Boom reboot right out of the gate. Rise of Lyric killed pretty much all the goodwill the brand had bought itself with Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations back in 2010 and 2011 respectively. As with the release of Rise of Lyric, we were shown that they were not committed to only releasing quality products, and we'd still get games like this. Seriously though, if you read what people were saying about Rise of Lyric when it came out, you'd think Colors and Generations never happened and that 06 was the previous game or something, putting the series in a really bad spot. But Rise of Lyric was not the only Sonic Boom game, as on the same day we got that one, Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal launched for the Nintendo 3DS, and it also came out to poor reception. Not the scathing reviews that Rise of Lyric got, but Shattered Crystal skewed negative because of its bloated runtime and overall meh gameplay. It didn't really matter that the game was more finished than Rise of Lyric because the game not being good in the eyes of the public only further damaged the Sonic Boom brand. But as I said last time, I never played this when it came out. Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal was a game that prior to now I had never played at all. Rise of Lyric caught my attention because of its Jak and Daxter-esque art design, so I gave that game a shot and of course hated it and traded it in. But Shattered Crystal was a game that my 14-year-old self was already not interested in because I had decided the developers of it were my arch enemy because they released Sly Cooper Thieves in Time the previous year. Very mature and rational stuff indeed. But when word got out that the game was pretty mediocre, I can't say I felt like I was missing out. I can talk more about this in a video I'm going to do in a few months, but I'll just say for now, Sanzaru Games comes across, to me, as a team of hardworking and fun-loving people. That's the vibe I get from them in the various interviews from them I've consumed in the pre-release of Sly 4 and for this game. So I've got nothing against them. However, upon actually playing Shattered Crystal, yeah, I really didn't like the game. I can sum this up pretty quickly. Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal is a game so boring that I felt my soul gradually leaving my body. I keep referring to games as soul-devouringly boring, and then I review another game a few months later that deserves the title even more. It's happened a ton of times recently. This game is really long, and yet there's not much in terms of total content here. The basic idea of the game is that you run through these stages as Sonic and you gradually unlock more characters throughout the first hour, starting with Tails and then the newcomer for Sonic Boom, Styx the Badger, and finally Knuckles. With all four of them unlocked, you must use their abilities combined to collect crystal fragments and blueprints while trying to reach the end of the stage. Sonic has this dash attack that goes through blue walls, Tails being able to fly over vents on the ground, Styx using her boomerang to hit switches, and Knuckles burrowing underground to reach hidden areas. Each character can be swapped out with a press of the D-pad, as the shoulder buttons swap what menus on the bottom screen, from the map to the collectibles tally. In concept, not terrible, but in execution, it's just not fun. For starters, the game handles kind of poorly. The controls are simple. A, using your enter beam on these grapple points, B is your jump and homing attack, and Y is the sprint button, and X is your special move. However, the controls of Sonic and Friends feels really slippery as you'll let go of the sprint button and still fall into pits or spikes, and the enter beam never felt very responsive, leaving you open to falling into pits some more. So actually playing as the characters is not fun in this, but then the levels are just loaded up with automation. Several seconds per stage just devoted to watching the characters fly through dash pads, moving through corkscrews and loops with none of the interactivity these elements had in other Sonic games, and that includes the ones that loaded up on dash pads already like Sonic 4. It's just a flop in this game because, as I said, you entirely surrender control throughout these segments. You don't even have to press the sprint button, the dash pads completely automate the experience. The game has like 5 worlds or so, but not that many levels. This is because the level length is extremely bloated. I spent over 10 minutes or so on the first stage. Regularly, when getting into a new main stage, I'd be there for 8 minutes or more. We all know that handheld games are best enjoyed in short bursts if you're on the bus or in the back seat as a kid or whatever. So I don't know why the levels in this game balloon in length so much. The same goes for Sonic Lost World on 3DS, which I reviewed last month. It's just not fun to be playing a stage and have to keep going and going and going when half of that time is the same 4 puzzles you've been solving all game long and the other half of that's dash pads. But of course, the most infamous aspect of Shattered Crystal is its exploration gimmick. One of the lead designers of this game had said that Metroid was a big inspiration for him, which influenced how their previous game, Sly 4, went about its optional collectibles, which was pretty cool, but this game wears its Metroid influence on its sleeve much more, in ways that I don't believe benefit the Sonic experience. What I mean by Metroid influence is that they have designed the game so that collecting things in the levels is one of the most important aspects of the campaign. They achieve this by locking progression behind a certain number of collectibles. For example, in a stage you can get a token for beating the level, but then another token for finding every crystal, and then another one for every blueprint. To keep playing more stages, you're going to have to scour the levels for all these collectibles, which in practice is more tedious than it sounds. For starters, throughout the early game you don't have all 4 characters, so by the time you unlock them all, you're going to have to go back and replay earlier levels to explore them fully as characters you didn't have before in order to keep making progress. It's not like Metroid where you unlock new moves you need to progress, it's just arbitrarily replaying content in order to unlock more of it in a pretty blatant attempt to extend playtime. It gets really bad because you can't just collect what you missed and leave. Quitting the stage will tell you that all progress will be lost, so you have to play the entire long level again. Say you missed one collectible again, that's another run of the stage you're gonna have to do. I played this factory level several times over and still didn't find everything I was looking for, and in these levels, I don't want to explore since levels have segmented chunks, automated dashpad segments, and points of no return, so it's really hard to enjoy the stages for what they could offer since you always feel like you're missing something. To improve the situation dramatically, you can unlock an upgrade to your map that shows you the locations of blueprints and crystals, and unsurprisingly, this makes the game much less frustrating to play, and I never missed one from then on. But before then, it was hell, never knowing if I was going the right way or retreading the same ground as rings and enemies respawn, and puzzles will lead to shields, or rings, or other worthless things. Even with a map though, I still don't want to play these levels because they're boring for the reasons I said just a moment ago. I feel like making this game fun would involve some simple changes. They don't even have to make more levels, I'd just say divide the levels they have into smaller chunks and make those acts of a zone. This would give the game a better pace, and I'd also say the collecting element should have been entirely optional because yes, the game would be shorter for most players, but that might give the players the desire to come back and replay it instead of feeling like the game was a lengthy slog. And also do more of these rival races, which were like mini Sonic Rivals levels, but a lot more interesting. If they did that, I'd hold this game in much higher esteem than I currently do. That wouldn't fix my issues with the levels, but it would be a start. As it stands, this is a game I'll probably never play again because it's boring. As I said, I could sum up this game fast, and so I have. The most interesting part of the game is how terrible the writing is. The plot of Shattered Crystal is that Amy gets captured by Lyric, and he's gonna zap her brain to learn of some ancient artifact location, and so Sonic and crew set out to rescue her, running into Shadow and Metal Sonic on the way there. Metal Sonic being the generic boss character he's been for several games now, and Shadow not needing any of that pathetic friendship that Sonic relies on. So, more of the same trash we're used to at this point as well. And that's it for the story. But the writing is truly diabolical. I'm talking several scenes of characters standing around making jokes like how Knuckles should be named Smashels, since that's what he does, or Styx and her tinfoil hat alien conspiracies, or literally making jokes about their plane crashing while they're crashing for 90 seconds straight. Or my favorite example, they rescue Amy before the final boss, and Sonic remarks, "So, should we go after him, or should we go get some lunch?" Like, what the heck is going on here? Even some of the critics noted that the writing in this was putrid. So it's not me being some uber-invested fanboy by saying that, it's just the lowest bar kiddie humor, like Lyric saying you can't kick his butt because snakes don't have butts. Very clever. What makes the writing so interesting to me as a topic is how I always feel like this game, or really the whole Boom era, as a turning point in the eyes of many fans. I already said Rise of Lyric made me think Sonic wasn't for me anymore, but to compound upon that, I'll bring up a series on YouTube I've been talking about for ages in this retrospective, Sonic Dissected. The guy who runs it, Roger, also does funny parody animations of Sonic, and I've brought some of those funny ones up that parodied the dumbest Sonic plots like Sonic Rush or Sonic Rivals in those videos. But his animation on Shattered Crystal was also one of my favorites. It ruthlessly mocked the game's writing style, to the point where when actually playing the game for the first time, I was shocked at how everything he made fun of, like doing stand-up in front of an ancient temple or joking around about nothing while the plane is crashing, are barely even parody. It's just what happens in the game, and that context makes it even funnier.
Evil mustard's fault!
Oh, Styx! Mustard isn't evil!
I have to use the yoke to steer the plane from crashing.
Yoke? I don't get that yoke.
No! A yoke is like a plane control stick!
Stick? Like sticks?
Funny, we're talking about a stirring stick, while Styx is here. And egg yolk kind of sounds like...
The ending of this parody animation always stuck out to me. At this point, I was pretty well programmed by all the YouTube videos I watched to believe that the best Sonic games were Sonic 1, 2, CD, 3K, Colors, and Generations, and that the writing of Sonic Colors had saved the series with its humor-based approach. But Sonic Dissected was different from all the other videos on YouTube that I just copied the opinions of verbatim, as they were giving criticism to the stories of Colors, Generations, and Lost World well before it was cool. But then, after making fun of this awful story, Roger cuts back to Black Knight and we see the characters fighting monsters and riding lava waves. It stood out so much because Sonic Dissected used to criticize the stories of Unleashed and Black Knight for valid reasons, like how Sonic just shows up in Black Knight and schools everyone how to be a knight in like 2 days' time. But then you just look back at those games after 4 years of this kind of stuff and think, man, Sonic was pretty cool before. And I don't just mean the console games before that gets brought up. It was pretty cool back in Sonic Advance 3 when Gemerald turned on Eggman and then you get a Supersonic Eggman team-up in the final boss as you defeated Gemerald and see in the ending that Tails made him nice, like Emerald from Sonic Battle, the previous game. It was good continuity and a cool moment. The Sonic Rush games have cool moments as well. Heck, I'd even say Shadow's ending in Sonic Rivals 2 was a neat moment as we see Metal Sonic still has some free will left post-Sonic Heroes. The handheld games used to be extensions of what the console games were doing, which I guess is what Shattered Crystal was, just for the new age direction of Sonic. My point is, a backlash against the 2010s Sonic was growing, and a second look at the 2000s games was also on the rise. These things did not just come out of nowhere. I've made it clear that the Sonic Era Wars is something I no longer want anything to do with, but I bring it up because I want to establish context on how all these things happened as we get back to Forces, the game that inspired my making that Sonic Stories video in 2018. But that pretty much covers Shattered Crystal. It was a mediocre game made worse with its blatant padding, one that only served to make the Boom series look even worse as it had not just one dud, but 2 duds right at the same time as the show began. But this began the Boom drought. The year was 2015. Sonic discussion was pretty lively back in 2013 and 14 as people were hyped to talk about the new games, especially with Boom on the way back in 2014. But following Boom's launch, Sonic discussion online became more of a wasteland. Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal were both much worse than anyone could have expected, and the Boom show was already on a path of decline with its early airing times. The media circus that was Rise of Lyric made, I'd say, pretty much everyone sick of Sonic Boom before the year was even over. But Sega couldn't just move on immediately. They put a lot of money into the Boom brand, which really failed, as I said last week. In 2015, we got Sonic Runners, a currently defunct mobile game. And then in 2016, the next time we saw something non-Boom related come out of Sonic was LEGO Dimensions. Real A-game content right there. It just felt like the series had grind to an absolute halt back in 2015. But then we got word on a new game, and it was Sonic Boom, Fire and Ice. Hooray, another Sonic Boom game, a sequel to Shattered Crystal no less. I felt nothing at the announcement of this game because I checked out of Sonic. I didn't care one bit about them continuing to do another game. My mindset was, here's hoping when Sonic Team eventually does a game, it'll be good. Boom is pretty much dead to me. But we ended up dragging things out a little bit longer as Fire and Ice got delayed to 2016 to a collective shrugged shoulders. I mean, if people were sick of Boom by 2015, that was even worse in 2016 because now it's a world where Mania and Forces were announced for 2017. Who cares about Boom anymore? So yeah, this game was the best received Boom title, but who cares? I actually did pick this one up back in 2017 before Mania came out thinking, maybe it was good, and I quickly dropped it because I thought it was quite boring. Playing it now, 6 years later, that's exactly how I felt all over again. Only now, I played the whole thing. Sonic Boom Fire and Ice is like white noise the video game. To its credit, it fixes all my major issues with Shattered Crystal. For example, I thought the character's handling was much tighter, so I felt in control a lot more than I did in the first game. Each world has more levels with none of them ever running past the 5-minute mark, stages typically being done in about 2 minutes, much more reasonable for a 2D Sonic game. And best of all, the collection element is entirely optional, as it should be. If you want to blast your way through Fire and Ice, you can. If you want to play every stage and get the most of the maps, you also can, showing Sanzaru was willing to take audience feedback and improve on their foundations, which is commendable. The problem is that while Fire and Ice does fix all the things that made Shattered Crystal so not good, it doesn't really add anything to make the game more fun. The major issue with Fire and Ice is that the levels are still just tracks of automation. In fact, I'd say it's worse in the sequel since without that exploration element being required, most players will see this game go in one ear and out the other as it plays itself more than half the time. Also introducing this Fire and Ice gimmick that never really elevates beyond the most basic of applications. Fire melts ice, ice turns water into ice, and sometimes you'll need to do this to get through some collapsing ceilings or whatever, but for the most part the usage of this gimmick felt really mundane. Not worthy of the goofy hype it got in the trailer. What happens if you mix fire and ice? Water. Mystery resolved. Even though Fire and Ice is much shorter than the first game and is doing things to improve the pacing considerably, the fact that the approach to the level design hasn't changed that much means that the game is still pretty damn boring at the end of the day. I knew I had to get this script done shortly after playing the game because I really felt like this is the kind of thing you'd play and forget almost all of before the week is even over. I just felt like when I wasn't watching the gameplay itself, I was doing almost nothing besides running forward. Level's not really doing much of anything in terms of variety. I barely ever switched characters besides them being required, because with 5 characters, the D-pad isn't used for that anymore, so you'd have to touch the screen, and on my, shall we say, setup, I didn't feel like reaching for my mouse to do that repeatedly in a stage, so I just stuck to one character for a long time, and the game didn't really stop me from doing that. Past the part where Tails is unlocked, I don't think I ever used Amy one time, and she's the new playable character you're supposed to be hyped about. But her abilities are never needed, the returning characters function pretty much the same as before, only with minor enhancements like Sonic not stopping dead in the air while doing his air dash, but otherwise it's the same basic puzzles from before, just done again. But looking at how it was made, I don't think Fire and Ice is some abomination, it's just offering very little in terms of gameplay. I think they tried their best. I mean, the art design is neat, giving us levels based on pirates and a haunted house. The game has full voice acting in its in-game cutscenes. The writing in general feels a lot more like the TV series, probably since Pontac and Graff wrote this game and many episodes of the series. And their new CG show-quality cutscenes demonstrate that the team was putting their best foot forward on 3DS, something I think the other ones I've covered never really tried to do. But when the mechanics are this empty feeling, it's hard to give the game more points than that. Although I did notice one thing about these games, and it's that I'm pretty sure Rise of Lyric is just not even canon to the show timeline. Fire and Ice is a sequel to Shattered Crystal. Fire and Ice being confirmed canon to the show as the main villain of the game, Defect goes on to appear in the series following the events of the game. Rise of Lyric was supposed to be the prequel to the cartoon, but Rise of Lyric and Shattered Crystal can't both be canon since Lyric has an entirely different motivation in both games, and both games showing how the heroes met Lyric. Seriously, Lyric had never met Sonic and friends in Shattered Crystal, but them meeting is how he was freed in Rise of Lyric, so it just doesn't make sense. Shattered Crystal also got a prequel comic in the Sonic Boom Archie books, so I feel like, in a way, Rise of Lyric was just disowned from the Sonic Boom brand before it was even released. Although generally speaking, I feel like it's weird to see the Boom cast in all 3 of these games being involved with some serious adventures since the show is just nothing like that as we see their misadventures at home. Even with Shattered Crystal's awful writing, I mean, Amy gets captured because she decided to joke about how dumb Lyric is with Sonic on the phone mid-fight. It's still some epic quest that you'd never actually see on the series. But at this point, I'm just rambling about the continuity and presentation of the long-dead 2010 Sonic cartoon series. So I should probably quit while I'm ahead and say that's pretty much it for the video. Fire and Ice just isn't worth any more time in 2022 than what I've given it. It's really not bad, it's just very dull, very in one ear and out the other. Whatever expression you want to use to describe it, it just doesn't have any staying power. And like I said when introducing it, most people at the time are ready to move on from Boom and just get to the games announced at the 25th anniversary party, Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces, having something new and interesting to play and talk about. With Fire and Ice releasing by the time Boom was really a husk, it just didn't grab the interest of a lot of people. It was too little too late by this point. The Boom brand was blown day one, so 2 years later an okay, I guess, sequel wasn't going to do anything. And that's that. At this point, older Sonic fans had Sonic Mania to look forward to, and this Sonic Forces, or at the time, Project Sonic 2017, looked like it was going back to that energy the younger, older Sonic fans were looking to see again as well. And the next 2 videos will detail how that went, and what I thought of them both, so I hope people are excited about that. In the meantime, I'll say what I always do. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.